Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. If ever there was a conflict of interest, it is having the woman in charge of the justice system and therefore in charge of the investigation into the SNP Government of Scotland sitting as part of the SNP Government of Scotland. How can the people be assured that justice will be done, that there will be no bias, and that the rule of law will transgress and justice may fall where she will? Well, obviously there isn't. There must obviously be a conflict of interest when that same one person is both in the government and investigating the government. And that is where Dorothy Bain finds herself. She is the Lord Advocate. She is totally responsible for everything legal in Scotland and sits as part of the cabinet. It is a role that needs to be broken up and needs to become independent, and that no one from any side of the judiciary must sit as part of the executive. We'll take a look at this article. It's not particularly deep, but we will take a look at it because it does highlight a basic flaw in the makeup of the Scottish justice system. Here goes. So, Lord Advocate attended 40 cabinet meetings during the police probe into the SNP finances. Lord Advocate Dorothy Bain's seat at the top political table has been branded conflicting, and calls have been made for her role to be broken up. No one from the judiciary, no one who controls the judiciary, should be part of the executive. They should not sit in on the cabinet. You cannot have such a biased state where someone who is in charge of the judiciary is then charged with investigating herself. Of course it's a conflict of interest. The head of the prosecution service has attended 40 cabinet meetings during a police investigation into SNP finances. Lord Advocate Dorothy Bain's seat at the top political table has been branded conflicting, and calls have been made for the role to be broken up. Scottish Labour leader Jackie Baillie said, "The fact that our most senior law officer and prosecutor is not independent from the government has been an ongoing cause for concern, and this needs to change. The call for this change has been clear. If we are to truly have confidence in the outcome of the investigation into the SNP, the Lord Advocate must not be seen to be compromised in any way." And as she sits on that cabinet, she is entirely compromised. There will always be questions as to the fairness of any investigation, the timings of things. I mean, we had that obvious delay between the police putting their request to do the warrant in and it coming out after the election, 2.5 weeks. And that has to go through the office of which she is head. Isn't that convenient? Bain, who took up her post as Lord Advocate after the 2021 Holyrood election, is head of the Crown Office, as well as being a minister and the chief legal officer in the government. Her former link to the government has been under the spotlight following a launch of a police probe in 2021 into SNP IndyRef 2 donations. And at that is the moment, it should have been made perfectly clear that she could not be a member of the cabinet, and that the chief law officer and the chief prosecutor must be independent and not accountable to any kind of political oversight. A Freedom of Information request has found that Bain has attended 40 cabinet meetings, mostly when Nicola Sturgeon was in charge. Well, that's hardly surprising considering that Useless has only been in charge for 9 weeks. Cabinet has met 24 times in 2021 following her appointment, and Bain was there on 17 of those occasions. In 2022, she attended 18 out of 41 cabinet meetings and was at 5 of the 14 this year. In total, she's been at over half of the cabinet meetings since becoming Lord Advocate. And if there's any question at all about the independence or the fairness or the oversight of any investigation into the SNP, then this will be the point at which those questions will be asked. How can you possibly have the prosecutor prosecuting herself effectively? Her deputy, the Solicitor General, has attended the Cabinet 14 times in the same period. Former SNP Chief Executive Peter Murrell, who is married to Sturgeon, and the one-time party Treasurer Colin Beattie were arrested. We know all this. Although the Lord Advocate and the Solicitor General have played no role in the SNP police investigation, other than being the people in charge of it, whose offices over which they oversee and are responsible for, are the ones doing it, but they don't play any active role, apparently, allegedly. We are informed. The Crown Office has faced scrutiny of its actions during the probe. Police asked the Crown Office for a search warrant for Nicola Sturgeon's home during the SNP leadership race in March, but it only got approval after the contest ended. The Crown Office were made aware of the request on March the 20th, but it wasn't until April the 3rd that they gave the green light to the warrant bid and sent it to a sheriff. Interesting that, isn't it? The government is intending to launch a consultation of the role of the law officers, and the research has been commissioned as an initial phase. In other words, they know they've been caught out and they're now belatedly trying to cover it up and make it look as though they knew that this was a problem and an issue and they're trying to sort it out. Whereas up until now, it's been perfectly good to have these very senior people in their back pocket, ready to be called on at a moment's notice when the need arises. Lib Dem MSP Liam MacArthur said Scottish Liberal Democrats have long argued that the Lord Advocate role should be split. The current role increasingly feels like an anachronism. An independent Director of Prosecutions would go some way to ending the perception of the conflicting loyalties that the current setup seems to invite. And of course it does. Of course it does. Every time she sits in that cabinet, questions will be asked. And how would they not? Tory MSP Jamie Green said this revelation underlines the need for the dual roles of Lord Advocate to be split. It is not right, and it's unfair on Dorothy Bain herself, that the Lord Advocate is both a member of the Cabinet and the head of the Crown Office. The current probe into SNP finances, like the Alex Salmond case before it, highlights how compromised and conflicting these twin roles are. And they are. You cannot be both the accuser and the accused. Bailey added, during the parliamentary inquiry into the Scottish Government's handling of sexual harassment complaints, the committee recommended that the role of Lord Advocate should be separate from the Scottish Government. And whilst appearing to accept this, the SNP have been slow to do anything about it. They have done nothing about it. A spokesperson for the Lord Advocate said the independence of the Lord Advocate is explicitly protected by law. Yes, in theory, but when that power is vested in an individual who sits in the cabinet for which that role is investigating, how can it possibly be independent? It's ridiculous, isn't it? They went on to say the Lord Advocate exercises their authority independently of political pressure and indeed of any other person. Well, again, if you're sitting on the cabinet that you are investigating, that is impossible. It is literally impossible. And so, yes, I think it's time that this was dealt with, that the role was split, that she makes a choice. Does she want to become an independent Crown Office officer, or does she want to remain in the cabinet and then therefore a political figure? It's a difficult question. I suspect as someone who is a KC, highly trained in law, that it will give her a longer, shall we say, lifespan than being a political person who may well be out at the next election. I think that's her role. Now, I'm not in any way impugning her. I'm not saying that she was compromised. I'm just saying that the perception of that compromise is always going to be there, while she is both the judge and the jury and hopefully the executioner. Anyway, I shall round off there and come up, but you see the concerns are valid. Here goes. If any future inquiry shows that Dorothy Bain used her political influence or a political biasing to influence any part of the investigation into the SNP, it would be a very, very serious breach and would, I think, require a serious punishment. Now, as I've said, I don't want to make accusations, and I'm not making accusations. I've got no evidence or anything. And let's hope that she hasn't done that. Let's hope she is true to her word and she has kept independent and out of it and recused herself. But nonetheless, the fact remains that having the person responsible for the prosecutions and the investigations and all that sitting in the cabinet, which is the one being investigated, gives at least that perception of possible corruption. And it should be broken up. And it should be broken up forthwith. I mean, like today. and it would be quite easy to do. You go, Dorothy, what do you want to do? You can have one role or the other. You can help appoint your successor into the role that you don't want, but the role is going to be broken up as of today. And it's quite simple to do. It's how businesses do things when they need to change. Why should governments be any different? But, that's up to the SNP. I think at the moment they're quite happy to have the situation as it stands, especially with this ongoing investigations, because also we need to have a look at Peter Murrell and the small boy knowledge that he apparently had. Anyway, I shall round off there. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you're hearing and see on the channel, please hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, please make a comment. Definitely leave a like. That's the one that helps us on the algorithm. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, don't have conflicts of interest, and goodbye.